In this video, we will work with table strokes and fills in order to further enhance and format a table within Indesign CS6. You can add strokes and fills to your tables in a number of ways. You can use the Table Options dialog box to change the stroke of a table border and to add alternating strokes and fills to columns and rows. To change the strokes and fills of individual cells or header and footer cells, you would use the Cell Options dialog box or use the swatches, stroke, or color panels. By default, the formatting you select using the Table Options dialog box will override any corresponding formatting previously applied to table cells. However, if you select the Preserve Local Formatting option in the Table Options dialog box, then the strokes and fills applied to individual cells are not overridden. If you use the same formatting repeatedly for tables or cells, you should consider creating and applying table styles or cell styles, much like we created character, paragraph, and object styles in previous tutorials. We will discuss how to create table and cell styles in the next video of the chapter. To demonstrate, first, we'll place the insertion point in a cell within the table. Then select the Table menu, then select Table Options, and select Table Setup. On the Table Setup tab, under Table Border, specify the desired weight, type, color, tint, and gap settings for the border that is placed around the entire table. Weight specifies the line thickness for the table or cell border. Type specifies the line style, such as thick or thin. Color specifies the color of the table or cell border. The choices listed are those available in the Swatches panel. Tint specifies the percentage of ink of the specified color to be applied to the stroke or fill. For additional information about tint, be sure to view the Working with Tints tutorial in a previous chapter. Gap color applies a color to areas between the dashes, dots, or lines if that's the type of border that you choose for your table. Again, this option is not available if solid is selected in the Type drop-down menu. Gap tint applies tints to the areas between dashes, dots, or lines. And again, this option is available only if dashes, dots, or lines is selected from the Type drop-down menu. This option is not available if solid is selected for type. When the overprint option is selected, it causes the ink specified in the color drop-down list to be applied over any underlying colors rather than knocking out those inks. Under Stroke Drawing Order, select the drawing order for the following options. If selected, the Best Joins option will cause the row strokes to appear to the front at the points where the strokes of different colors cross. In addition, when strokes such as double lines cross, the strokes are joined and the crossing points are connected. Row strokes in front will cause row strokes to appear in the front. Column strokes in front will cause column strokes to appear in front. If selected, Indesign 2.0 compatibility causes row strokes to appear in the front. In addition, when strokes such as double lines cross, they are joined and the crossing points are connected only at points where strokes cross in a T shape. If you do not want stroke formatting of individual cells to be overridden, select Preserve Local Formatting if available. Local formatting does not exist within the table if the option to check the box is grayed out, such as in our example. When finished, click the OK button. Next, we'll discuss adding stroke and fill to individual cells that can be accomplished by using the Cell Options dialog box, Stroke panel, or the Swatches panel. You can determine which cells are formatted with a stroke or fill by selecting or deselecting lines in the Preview proxy. If you want to change the appearance of all rows or columns in a table, use an alternating stroke or fill pattern in which the second pattern is set to 0. So to add stroke and fill using the Cell Options dialog box, using the Type tool, place the insertion point in or select the cell or cells in which you want to add a stroke or fill. To add a stroke or fill to header and footer rows, you would select the header and footer cells at the beginning of the table. Select the Table menu, select Cell Options, and select Stroke and Fills. In the Preview proxy area, specify which lines will be affected by the stroke changes. In this example, I'm going to leave only the inner part. And we'll take a look at what this looks like. Other options under Cell Stroke include specifying the desired weight, type, color, tint, and gap settings which were discussed moments ago. Just for dramatic effect, I'll apply a dash stroke with a weight of 2 and a red color within our table. Notice also we have an option under the heading for Cell Fill. For Cell Fill, we could specify a desired color and tint settings. Select Overprint Stroke and Overprint Fill if desired, and click OK. Notice now the changes that have been made within this table. I selected a blue cell fill, so a blue cell fill has been applied. Within the inside parts of each cell, I've decided to add a dashed red border, and notice that they're displayed. I'm going to undo these changes, and next we'll add a stroke to cells using the Stroke panel. First, select the cell or cells that you want to affect. To apply a stroke to a header or footer cell, select the header or footer row. If necessary, you would open the Stroke panel by selecting the window menu and selecting Stroke. In the Preview Proxy area, specify which lines will be affected by stroke settings. Then specify a weight value and select a type. Notice now the changes that have been made to our table. Again, I will undo. Next, we will add fill to cells, but this time we'll do it using the Swatches panel. First, we'll select the cell or cells that we want to affect. To apply a fill to header and footer cells, you would select the header or footer row. Then choose the window menu, select Color, and then select Swatches. The Swatches panel will open, and make sure the Object button is selected. Then select a swatch. After I deselect this cell, notice now that it's been applied with a fill color of yellow. This yellow came from the Swatches panel. We could do the same thing with adding a gradient using the Gradient panel. Select the cell, then the window menu, select Color, and select Gradient. The Gradient panel is displayed. Within this dialog box, I'll select whether the type is a linear or radial gradient, and I'll make my color changes. Notice now when I move back to the table, for dramatic effect you can see that I applied quite a dark gradient. Again, I'll undo these actions. If you'd like to add diagonal lines in a cell, using the Type tool, place the insertion point in or select the cells where you want to add diagonal lines. Then, choose a table menu, select Cell Options, and select Diagonal Lines. Towards the top of the dialog box, select the type of diagonal line that you'd like to add. Under Line Stroke, specify desired weight, type, color, and gap settings. You can also specify a tint percentage and select Overprint Options. From the Draw drop-down menu, choose Diagonal in Front to place the diagonal line in front of the cell's contents. Choose Content in Front to place the diagonal line behind the cell's contents. When finished, click OK. Notice now the diagonal lines are placed within our table. You can alternate strokes and fills to enhance readability or to improve the appearance of your table. Alternating strokes and fills in table rows does not affect header and footer rows. However, alternating strokes and fills in columns does affect header and footer rows. Alternating strokes and fill settings override cell stroke formatting, unless you select that box that I've referred to several times, called Preserve Local Formatting in the Table Options dialog box. To add alternating strokes to a table, with the insertion point in a cell, select the Table menu, select Table Options, and choose Alternating Row Strokes, or Alternating Column Strokes. For alternating pattern, select the type of pattern that you want to use. Select Custom if you want to specify a pattern, for example, one column with a thick black line followed by 3 columns with thin yellow lines. Under the Alternating heading, specify the fill options for both the first pattern and the next pattern. For example, you may want to add a solid stroke to the first column and a thick, thin line to the next column, so that they alternate. Specify 0 for next if you want the strokes to affect every row or column. Please note that in tables that span multiple frames, alternating strokes and fills for rows do not restart at the beginning of additional frames in the story. If possible, select Preserve Local Formatting if you want formatted strokes previously applied to the table to remain in effect. For Skip First and Skip Last, specify the number of rows or columns at the beginning and end of the table in which you do not want stroke attributes to appear. When finished, click the OK button. Notice now that the stroke, colors, and widths alternate within my table. I'm going to undo these options. What's more popular is adding alternating fills to a table with the insertion point in a cell. Choose Table, and then Table Options, and Alternating Fills. For alternating pattern, select the type of pattern that you want to choose. Select Custom if you want to specify a pattern, such as 1 row shaded in gray, followed by 3 rows shaded in yellow. For alternating, specify the fill options for both the first pattern and the subsequent pattern. For example, if you selected every second column for alternating pattern, you may want to shade the first 2 columns in a gray tint and leave the next 2 blank. Specify a 0 for next if you want the fill to apply to every row. As always, select Preserve Local Formatting if you want previously formatted fills applied to the table to remain in effect. For Skip First and Skip Last, specify the number of rows or columns at the beginning and end of the table in which you do not want fill attributes to appear. When finished, click the OK button. Notice now that my table alternates the fill colors for each row. If you'd like to turn off alternating strokes and fills in a table, simply place your insertion point in the table or select a row or column. Select Table Options, and select the alternating row strokes, alternating column strokes, or alternating fills. For where it says Alternating Pattern, choose None and click OK. This concludes our tutorial on working with table strokes and fills within InDesign CS6. Setting table stroke and fill options for your table can help you set it apart from other content within your document. So be sure to apply the skills learned in this video within your future projects.